The night my son asked me to choose between my children, I was standing in the kitchen, barefoot, feeling the cool tile creep into my bones. The house was quiet in that particular southern way, old wood settling cicadas humming outside like they had nowhere else to be. I was 64 years old, widowed for 6 summers, and I had just finished washing the same chipped coffee mug my husband used every morning for 23 years. "Mom, we can't keep pretending this is normal." Daniel didn't raise his voice. He never did when he thought he was being reasonable. That was always the most unsettling part. He spoke like a man delivering a decision, not a son having a conversation. I turned slowly, drying my hands on a towel that had once been white. "Explain," I said. He leaned against the counter, arms, crossed eyes drifting around the kitchen, like he was already planning changes. New cabinets, new appliances, a new version of my life. "Elaine has been here too long," he said. "This was supposed to be temporary." Temporary, as if safety came with an expiration date. "She lives here," I replied quietly. "This is her home." He sighed, rubbing his forehead like I was exhausting him. "No, Mom. This is your house, and eventually it'll be mine. But she's treating it like a permanent landing pad." I felt something tighten in my chest. "You're asking me to throw my daughter out of my house?" I asked. "I'm saying you're enabling her," he said. "She needs to stand on her own. Enable. Burden. Growth." Daniel loved words that made cruelty sound responsible. Outside, rain tapped against the windows. Inside, the air felt thinner. "She helps me," I said. "She works. She drives me to appointments. She cooks when my hands hurt. She's still dependent," he replied. "And honestly, it doesn't look good." That's when I understood. This wasn't about space, it was about image. "What exactly do you want me to do?" I asked. He pulled out his phone. "I've already looked at options. Short-term rentals, senior housing. She could stay with friends. I'll handle the logistics." Handle, like he was doing me a favor. I studied his face, searching for the boy who once cried when his sister left for college. The boy who swore family came first. "When did you decide this?" I asked. "After Easter," he said. "My wife's been uncomfortable. And Mom, you're not getting younger. You need stability." There it was. The warning disguised as concern. "I need time," I said. His jaw tightened. "How much?" "I'll let you know." He didn't like that. Control slipping always made him restless. "Just remember," he said, grabbing his coat, "this affects your future too." The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed long after his car drove away. That night, lying in bed, listening to the house breathe, I realized something that made my stomach drop. My son wasn't asking. He was preparing. I woke before dawn the next morning with that familiar heaviness lodged behind my ribs. The kind that doesn't let you rest, only replay. Enable, burden, temporary. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table where Daniel had planned his sister's removal like a business deal. The mug warmed my hands but not my chest. When Elaine came downstairs, she looked like she always did in the mornings. Hair loosely tied back, soft sweater, a careful smile she wore for my sake. "You're up early," she said. "So are you," I replied. She studied my face. "Did something happen?" I almost told her. Almost. But some truths need to be carried alone first. "It was just a long night," I said. She nodded, accepting the lie more gracefully than I deserved. After she left for work, I opened the hallway closet and pulled out the metal lockbox I hadn't touched in years. Inside were papers layered with time deeds, insurance documents, tax returns, and the will my husband and I signed long ago. Equal shares, clean lines, fairness on paper. I used to believe fairness was protection. Tucked behind the documents was an envelope in my husband's handwriting. My name written carefully, as if he already knew this moment would come. I sat before opening it. He had written the letter during his last winter. The cancer had taken his strength, but not his clarity. He wrote about values, about legacy, about Elaine's quiet resilience, and then about Daniel. He didn't accuse him. He simply said he worried that ambition without empathy could become dangerous. He asked me to protect what mattered, even if it made me uncomfortable. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried silently. That evening, Daniel called. So he said briskly, "Have you thought about it?" "Yes. And I'm not asking Elaine to leave." Silence stretched. "So you're choosing her," he said. "I'm choosing what's right." His tone hardened. "Then you're forcing my hand." That sentence should have scared me. Instead, it clarified everything. After the call, I went upstairs and knocked on Elaine's door. She opened it with red eyes. "He wants me gone, doesn't he?" she whispered. I nodded. "I'll start looking," she said quickly. "I don't want to come between you." I took her hands. They were cold. "You are not the problem," I said. "And you're not leaving." She broke, then crying into my shoulder like she hadn't since she was young. I held her and felt something inside me shift. Care had become a crime. And I was done apologizing for it. Daniel stopped calling after that. Instead, he sent emails, long ones, polished, professional. He copied his wife, his advisor, once a lawyer friend. It felt like being managed. One afternoon, the accountant who had worked with our family business for nearly 30 years called me. "I assumed you knew," he said carefully. "There have been some internal adjustments." Daniel had deferred revenue, shifted expenses, made the company appear unstable, not failing, just fragile enough to justify intervention. I understood immediately. He wasn't just pushing his sister out. He was building a case against me. That night, I confronted him calmly. "It's smart planning," he said. "You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under." "I understand manipulation," I replied. He laughed softly. "You're being emotional." 2 days later, Elaine found a typed letter taped to her bedroom door. No signature, no return address. It suggested she leave voluntarily to avoid embarrassment. It hinted at legal action. This wasn't pressure anymore. It was intimidation. That night, I made an appointment with a lawyer of my own. She listened without interrupting. "You're not confused," she said, "and you're not powerless." Then she said something I'll never forget. People who rely on intimidation collapse when it stops working. I went home steadier than I'd felt in years. Daniel invited us to dinner a week later, to clear the air. Halfway through, he leaned forward. "We need clarity. One direction." I set my fork down. "I've already taken steps," I said. "Legal ones." His smile faltered. I updated my estate plan. The silence that followed told me everything. For the first time, Daniel realized I was no longer reacting. I was preparing. There's a particular kind of power in letting someone underestimate you. I learned that late in life, but once I did, everything changed. After dinner at Danielle's house, I didn't confront him. I didn't warn him. I didn't raise my voice. I did exactly what he expected. I hesitated. I asked questions twice. I let him explain things slowly, patiently, like I was a child struggling to keep up. When he talked about finances, I frowned. When he mentioned legal structures, I sighed. When he offered to help manage things, I nodded. Inside, I was listening very carefully. Elaine noticed first. One evening, while we were folding laundry, she stopped mid-sock and looked at me. "You're acting different," she said. "How so?" I asked. "Quieter, smaller." I smiled. "Sometimes that's how you see more." I didn't tell her yet. I couldn't. Not until I understood how far Daniel was willing to go. Over the next 2 weeks, he started dropping by unannounced, checking on me, asking if I'd taken my medication, asking the same questions repeatedly, then watching my answers like he was testing something. "Did you pay the electric bill yet? Did you remember your appointment? Are you sure Elaine isn't stressing you out?" I answered slowly. Occasionally, I forgot something minor. I let him correct me. Each time I saw relief flicker across his face. He wanted me uncertain, because uncertainty could be documented. Meanwhile, I met with my lawyer every Thursday afternoon. She taught me something critical. Guardianship cases, she said, are rarely about care. They're about control. And the petitioner always reveals themselves eventually. So we prepared. We documented every visit, every comment, every email. We gathered medical records, independent evaluations, financial audits, and we did something else. We waited. Because men like Daniel don't stop when they think they're winning. They accelerate. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Thick, official, court-sealed. Elaine brought it to me without opening it, her hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. "I think this is about you," she said. I already knew. Inside was a petition for guardianship. Daniel was asking this court to declare me incapable of managing my own affairs due to age-related cognitive decline and undue emotional influence. In plain language, he was asking the law to erase me. Elaine collapsed into the chair beside me. "He can't do this," she whispered. "You're fine. You're strong." "I know," I said. "That's not the point." The petition outlined concerns, my grief, my reliance on Elaine, my resistance to professional guidance. It cited my refusal to make appropriate housing decisions. Appropriate in this case meant removing my daughter. I felt anger rise sharp and hot, but it passed quickly. Anger would only help him. What he didn't know was that we had already anticipated this. Within hours, my lawyer filed a response. Within days, the court ordered evaluations, independent ones. Daniel called that night. "I didn't want it to come to this," he said, voice heavy with practiced regret. "You chose this," I replied calmly. "You're not seeing clearly," he said. "Elaine's manipulating you." I laughed softly. I couldn't help it. "No," I said, "you are." Silence. "You don't understand how this looks," he snapped. "I understand exactly how it looks," I said, "and I'm ready to let others see it too." After we hung up, Elaine sat across from me, eyes wide. "What if you lose?" she asked. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I already won," I said, the moment he filed that paper. Daniel's next move was predictable. If he couldn't take me, he'd take the house. Within a week, a real estate agent left a card in my mailbox. A friendly note about market opportunities. 2 days later, Daniel emailed asking if I'd considered selling while prices are high. I didn't reply. Instead, my lawyer and I finalized something we'd been quietly building for months, a living trust. The house my house was transferred into it. I remained trustee. Elaine was granted lifetime residency rights. She could not be evicted. She could not be pressured out. Not by Daniel. Not by anyone. When Daniel found out, he didn't call. He showed up. He stood in my living room, jaw-clenched, papers shaking in his hand. "You went behind my back," he said. "So did you," I replied. "You don't get to do this," he snapped. "That house is part of my future." "No," I said calmly. "It's part of my present." Elaine stood at the doorway, silent but steady. Daniel looked at her, then back at me. "You're choosing her over me," he said. "I'm choosing boundaries," I replied. His face changed then. The mask slipped. "This isn't over," he said quietly. I believed him, but for the first time I wasn't afraid, because the house refused to be sold, and so did I. Thanksgiving arrived whether we were ready or not. Calendars don't pause for family wars. I decorated the house slowly that year, not out of cheer, but defiance. The table was set. The good plates came out, the same ones my husband insisted we save for real occasions. If this wasn't real, nothing was. Elaine watched me from the doorway. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied, "I do." Daniel arrived late as expected. He looked composed, confident, dressed like a man who had rehearsed his role. His wife smiled too tightly. The grandchildren ran past us, unaware of the quiet violence unfolding. Dinner began politely. Compliments were exchanged. Avoided glances filled the spaces between sentences. Halfway through the meal, Daniel cleared his throat. "I think it's important we talk about Mom's future," he said, glancing around the table. "Especially with everything going on." The room went still. He didn't say lawsuit. He didn't say guardianship. He said concern. "I just want to make sure she's protected," he continued. "From stress, from being influenced." I felt Elaine stiffen beside me. "I'm right here," I said calmly. Daniel smiled gently. "Of course you are, Mom." That tone, the one that implies you might not be next time. "I've noticed some confusion," he added. "Missed appointments, financial misunderstandings." I met his eyes. "Name one." Silence. "I don't want this to get ugly," he said finally. "But sometimes families need professional help." That was his warning shot. I stood slowly. "This is Thanksgiving," I said. "If you want to discuss court matters, you can do it with my lawyer present." The table erupted in awkward movement. Chairs scraped. Someone coughed. Daniel leaned back, lips pressed tight. The message had been delivered. That night, after everyone left, Elaine asked, "Is this going to get worse?" "Yes," I said, "before it gets honest." The courthouse smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Nothing about it felt dramatic. That's what made it terrifying. Daniel sat across the room, flanked by his attorney. He didn't look at me. I wondered if that was confidence or avoidance. The judge listened carefully as Daniel's lawyer spoke about concern, about aging, about influence. He painted me as a woman overwhelmed by grief, clinging to the nearest emotional support. When it was my turn, I didn't defend myself emotionally. I laid out facts, medical evaluations, financial records, emails. Then came Daniel's testimony. He spoke smoothly about responsibility, about protecting the family, about difficult decisions. When asked why he wanted Elaine removed from the house, he said, "It wasn't personal. It was about clarity." Clarity, that word again. Then my lawyer asked him one question. "Why did you believe you had the authority to decide where your sister lived?" He hesitated. "Because it's my inheritance," he said, "and delays create complications." The room went silent. The judge leaned forward. "Inheritance," he repeated, "while your mother is still alive." Daniel didn't answer. In that moment I knew. He had already lost. Discovery is merciless. Emails Daniel assumed were private. Messages he thought sounded reasonable. Patterns that looked harmless alone but devastating together. The most damaging witness wasn't Elaine. It was my husband's old lawyer. A man who had known our family for decades. A man Daniel assumed would stay neutral. He didn't. He testified that my husband had expressed concern about Daniel years before his death. That he had warned me privately to protect the house and the business if ambition ever turned cruel. Then came the medical expert. Clear, direct, unimpressed. "No cognitive impairment," she said. "What I observed was stress caused by coercion." Daniel's confidence cracked. When my daughter testified, her voice trembled only once. "I didn't want the house," she said. "I wanted safety." Daniel stared at the table. The judge ordered mediation before trial. As we left the courthouse, Elaine whispered, "Is it almost over?" I looked back at the building, then at my son standing alone near the steps. "No," I said, "but the truth has started talking." Spring arrived slowly, like the world itself was cautious about trusting good news again. The courthouse trees were just beginning to bud when my lawyer called and said the words I'd been waiting for. "The judge wants additional context," she said, "specifically about your late husband's intentions." I knew exactly what she meant. That afternoon, I opened the lockbox again. The metal hinge creaked softly, the sound of something long closed being asked to speak. Beneath the documents, beneath the neat folders of evidence, was the letter my husband had written during his last winter. I hadn't shown it to anyone, not Elaine, not my lawyer, not even myself more than once. Until now. The letter wasn't dramatic. My husband had never been a dramatic man. He wrote about responsibility, about how love without boundaries can rot into entitlement, about how ambition, if never challenged, starts mistaking power for permission. Then he wrote about Daniel. He didn't call him cruel. He didn't call him greedy. He said something worse. I worry, he wrote, that Daniel believes family exists to support his direction, not to question it. He asked me gently, carefully, to protect the house and the business if that day ever came, not to punish our son, but to prevent harm. When my lawyer presented the letter in court, Daniel finally looked at me. Really looked. It wasn't anger in his eyes. It was shock. Because this wasn't something I had invented in fear or grief. This was foresight. The judge read the letter slowly, twice. The courtroom was silent except for the faint scratch of his pen. For the first time, Daniel wasn't the smartest man in the room. The verdict didn't come with fanfare. No dramatic pause, no raised voices, just a measured voice delivering consequences. The court denied the guardianship petition in full. The judge stated clearly that I was mentally competent, financially aware, and legally justified in every action I had taken. He cited a clear pattern of coercive behavior on Daniel's part. Those words mattered. Coercive behavior. The trust was upheld. Elaine's lifetime residency was protected. The business was placed under permanent, independent oversight. Daniel was ordered to pay all legal fees. I sat very still as the ruling was read, not because I was afraid to move, but because I needed the moment to settle. Daniel's attorney leaned in and whispered something to him. Daniel didn't respond. When he finally looked at me, there was no fury left, no confidence, just the dull realization of a man who had gambled and lost. Outside the courthouse, Elaine cried openly, not loud, not dramatically, just years of fear leaving her body at once. "I didn't know it could end like this," she said. "It didn't end," I replied. It clarified. Daniel walked past us without a word. That silence was louder than any apology. People assume revenge looks like shouting, like humiliation, like destruction. They're wrong. Revenge, when done properly, looks like structure. 2 weeks after the verdict, I finalized the last document. The family business, every share of it, was transferred into a charitable trust in my husband's name. Its profits would fund scholarships and housing assistance in Savannah. Elaine was named advisory board member. Daniel was offered a position. Employee, not owner. When he found out, he sent one final letter, not legal, not polite. He said I had taken everything from him. I read it once. Then I folded it and placed it in the lockbox with the others. I wrote him back. I told him I loved him. I told him the door was open to a relationship built on respect. I told him inheritance was never a guarantee, only a reflection of character. He never replied. Summer came quietly. Elaine planted tomatoes in the yard. I repainted the spare room and turned it into a space that belonged only to me. One afternoon, while sorting old photos, I found a picture of Daniel and Elaine as children sitting on the porch steps, arms pressed together, laughing. I allowed myself one moment of grief. Then I put the photo away. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to live backward. If you're listening to this story and feeling something tighten in your chest, hear me clearly. You are not too old to draw a line. You are not wrong for protecting your dignity. And you are not required to sacrifice yourself to keep the peace. My son tried to force me to throw his sister out of my house. Instead, I forced the truth into the light. And at this stage of life, that may be the most powerful inheritance of all.